Hey, everybody out there in podcast land. This is Wes, and that is Andy, and we are back for another iteration of Music That Matters on Different Strings, colon, a guitar adjacent podcast. I'm trying really hard not to belch right now because I don't want you to have to edit that out.
Oh, just get it. Just make it happen.
I just needed to swallow it a little bit. So, Andy, please say hello to everybody and then follow straight on with telling them where they can find us on the internet.
Hi, everyone. You can reach us at differentstringspodcast.com.
And yeah, so Music That Matters is I want to reiterate that this is um music that matters and not necessarily music that's awesome. Because I
What a
think
disclaimer.
maybe for the first time since we started doing this, I do not think every song on this album slaps.
Mm, I might agree with you on that.
Yeah, I think two-thirds of the album is really good and it tapers off at the end and the last
Okay.
three songs. So the band is Cutting Crew, not the Cutting Crew, just
Just
Cutting Crew.
just cutting crew.
And the album is Broadcast, which is their debut album that came out in 1986.
Wow, this was their debut album.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they're one of the, and they weren't together for a long time before the album came out. They only got together in 85. Um and they benefited, so like with grunge and with hair metal and every movement as it continues to go on, there's like tack on bands. They
Hmm.
probably have a good song or two and the label hears it and they're like, we can make money off of those people.
Hmm.
And I feel like Cutting Crew benefited from that explosion of British keyboard plus guitar bands in the mid 80s.
Hmm.
Not entirely different from the Outfield, although I think a notch below the Outfield.
Yeah.
They probably didn't have a lot of expectations laid on them. So when they came out with their debut album, of course, you put out the single, and the single from this album is called I Just, in parentheses, Died in Your Arms Tonight. Very dramatic song title, right?
Yeah.
Very, yeah. If you're a romantic, you are instantly connected to this song. And it starts with this gentle keyboard pad. And in many ways, it's a pretty typical ballad for the first 30 seconds. But then laced throughout the entire song is this absolutely ripping guitar line played by a guy called Kevin McMichael, who's a Canadian that the singer, who is British, Nick Van Eede, met while he was touring in Canada with his previous band.
Mm,
And he said, we got to get together. And
mm.
they indeed did get together. So that's the thing. I heard the song on the radio and it grabbed me and I went and bought the album, even though I'm not a big, in 1986, I am not a big keyboard person, right? So this single, I Just Died in Your Arms, ran up the chart. It was a big hit it was the first big hit for any band on the Virgin label, which was pretty new at the time. Now their follow-up singles from this album and the other albums they put out never charted higher than 29, and they didn't stay on the charts very long. So they have gone down in the annals of music history as a bona fide 80s one-hit wonder.
They
They
did
put out,
indeed.
yeah, they put out two more albums, neither of which is particularly fantastic. Neither of which is particularly terrible. Kevin unfortunately died from lung cancer in 2002. And after his stint in Cutting Crew, he got together with Robert Plant and wrote, recorded, and toured with Plant around his album called Fate of Nations. And that was in 1993. Um, his career with Robert Plant was cut short by Jimmy Page. Not that Jimmy Page had anything against Kevin, but if you're Robert Plant and Jimmy Page says, let's do an album together, you kind of just do it, right?
Yeah.
So the thing about Broadcast is, um, it's not an amazing album. And like I said, the segment isn't called Music That's Amazing, it's Music That Matters. And this album matters a lot, especially to me.
Okay.
In 1986, I was full on heavy metal dude, a dedicated super strat player at the time. And Kevin McMichael was also a super strat player, but he was making music that had a lot more depth than the typical super strat players that were coming out of LA and the glam metal scene.
Mm,
Plus, he wasn't just playing pedal tones and then a wheedly wheedly solo. He was playing the guitar, the whole damn guitar, serving the song and
mm,
being awesome while he did it. And you could stitch together. It wasn't like he played a rhythm part and a lead part. They blended seamlessly together. Even though, like during the solo sections, you could hear rhythm guitar in the background. The part, especially on I Just Died in Your Arms, that part he plays goes straight through the whole song in one almost seamless act of brilliance. It is just the most amazing thing that I had ever heard at that point in my life, because nobody played guitar like that in my world. You know,
right.
you played the heavy ass rhythm, and then you threw down your wheedly wheedly solo, and you went back to the rhythm for the rest of the song. And this guy was doing none of that. He was just playing to the song, for the song. Um, and he used a Roland G505 in the video for the Died in Your Arms single. It's a synth controller that looks like a Strat. Um, I've watched a bunch of videos of him playing live with Robert Plant and with Cutting Crew. And with Robert Plant, he used a hum single Strat, like a regular Strat.
Mhm.
Um, During the late 80s, I saw him a lot with pointy headed Charvels that were hum single. And that is absolutely one of the reasons why I gravitated towards pointy headed hum single Charvels in the late 80s myself, because I
Mm.
love this guy's and his playing and his tone. As far as I know, he used 2203s and 2204s, which are
Huh.
Marshall JCM 800s,
Uh-huh.
1500 watts. Um, he doesn't have the beefiest tone ever. He's got very 80s tone, right? Compressed, forest. He could be using any amp, but I've seen shadows of half stacks in the backgrounds on their live stuff, and read some things where he was using Marshalls.
Mhm.
And what I really loved about this album was it felt seamless. The songs, especially the first 6 or 7 songs of the album, flow together so perfectly. And the instruments are integrated into each other so perfectly. Nothing is out of place. There's no excess, but also nothing is missing. Like you don't listen to it and go, wow, I really wish the bass player would have played the 5 there. Probably because he already did, because he knew that, right?
Right.
And the single from Broadcast obviously got the most attention. The album has a half dozen other really good songs, and
Mm,
the rest aren't that bad. I mean, it's not most of the albums that we've had. I would venture to say all the albums we've had up to this point are pretty much all killer, no filler, right? Um, this album, I don't feel like is one of those. There's a song called Sahara that's kind of plotty. It just goes on too long.
mm,
And the 2 songs that are after that wrap up the album aren't amazing. But I never turn the album off before it ends. I listen
mm,
to all 9 or 10 songs,
mhm.
and the first side, the big hit was the first song on side 2. That's how old this album is. I had it on cassette first. The big single is the first song on side 2, and the first side is just a master class in how to integrate a guitar into what is essentially a keyboard band,
Right.
and do it in a way that serves the songs rather than serving the player. I don't get the feeling that McMichael was particularly egotistic, because you can kind of tell that from his playing, because he just plays. He's not super flashy. Everything he does is cool though. And I mean, I can't even tell you how much time I spent trying to figure out Kevin's guitar parts.
Mm,
At my skill level in 86, 87, it was a real struggle,
okay.
because I thought of a song as play rhythm to get to the solo, play the solo, and then play rhythm till the song ends.
And that's not what this band or
And
this
that's
album is.
not at all. I mean, I still probably can't play the songs perfectly, but even to this day, I love playing along with this album, and I find myself kind of spacing out when I do it, and just enjoying being in the music instead of just kind of listening to having it blasting at me, if that makes sense.
Yeah. My first impression of this album, I think, was that the single was not the best song on the album. It's definitely the right song to be the single.
Yeah.
But I I actually found the first half of the album before the single to be pretty good. Well, not pretty good, really good. And
Yeah.
I immediately, I mean, we're guitar players, we do a guitar podcast. I was listening for the guitar,
Yeah.
so kind of cheating there, but I immediately was struck by how unique Kevin was as a player and the whole vibe that you just described about how he's playing for the song and not doing the typical rhythm, solo rhythm nonsense.
Yeah.
Um, I heard that right away, and I really liked how he managed to fit his guitar, that both the playing, the parts, the tone into that ensemble, and still sound like an 80s, an 80s pop band, but he had this really neat, cool, like 80s lead tone, and
Yeah.
heard it the whole time. It was a really interesting, like I did not listen to this album as a kid. I knew the single, didn't love the single. It just wasn't something that I heard and was like, I got to put that in my repertoire. It didn't hit me like it hit you.
Yeah.
And then when you suggested it, I'm like, wow, I must be missing something. And and I was like, as soon as I put it on, I thought, this is not the album I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
I was expecting more like that single, and that's not what this album is whatsoever.
Yeah. And especially, so the album starts with this, like, I'm pretty sure it's played on a keyboard, but it's a bass riff, or almost a pedal tone riff, and then it just kicks in. And the the first side of the album basically doesn't stop. The songs
Hmm.
blend very well into each other, and the pacing is just brilliant. They take you up, they bring you back, they take you down, they bring you back. It's just the first half of this album is just utterly fantastic. And then you have the big single is the first song on the second side, and then kind of after that I start to lose interest. They're not terrible songs, like I said, but yeah, I don't like the second side as much as the first side. And the this might also almost sound like blasphemy, but Kevin McMichael reminds me a lot of Vito Bratta from White Lion. Not necessarily because they play the same way or they've got the same technique, but because of the seamless way they integrate rhythm and lead into one cohesive guitar part.
Okay.
So I see a lot of similarities in their approach to a song. Not necessarily the way they play or the style they play, but their approach to a song, and just creating, basically, if you recorded just one guitar track, these guys are the guys, those are the two guys you want to go to. You call McMichael, you call Brada, and
Okay.
unfortunately Vito doesn't play anymore and Kevin's dead, unfortunately. So
I didn't know
yeah.
Vito gave up the guitar.
For the last I read, he's got some musculoskeletal problems.
Oh no.
and so playing guitar is difficult for him from what I understand, but I could be wrong. He just kind of dropped off the face of the earth when White Lion faded, when they got dropped from their label. I think he went home. His dad was sick. He went home to take care of his family, and then he just never had any interest in being in a band anymore.
I wonder, yeah, that's kind of disappointing when you think that Vito was considered at the time. He was one of the top talents, right?
Oh yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I wonder if we could do a whole episode. I wonder how long it would take to do a whole episode on guitar players from our past that like just stopped playing guitar and did something else. Because as soon as you mentioned Vito, I thought of Dan Spitz from Anthrax, and I loved Dan Spitz from Anthrax. I
Oh
loved me some
yeah.
Dan Spitz, and when I found out what after Anthrax what he did, also like Vito, I think he had or has a health condition that may make playing and or touring difficult. But Dan got into watchmaking, and
Yeah.
he's a
Like at a
premier.
high level.
Yeah, like he's a premier watchmaker, a Swiss watchmaker. I wonder how many guitar players or even just musicians in general from our past that like have these secret post music lives that are just super interesting. Wonder
Yeah.
and I do think there's an element of that like um when you're a musician and you are talented and you care a lot that you tend to be very obsessive over all of your hobbies,
Yeah.
right? And so it doesn't surprise me that Spitz is making incredible Swiss watches. So anyway, sorry to get off track, but when you said Vito, I was like, hmm. So this album clearly matters a lot to you. It
Yes.
would you say it shaped, was it just because you enjoyed listening to it, or you think it shaped your style, or a little bit of both?
It definitely it cemented me as a super strat player, which
Okay.
kind of turned me into a strat player in the long run. Um, but it also was the first time I felt like you could create an integrated guitar part rather than in my mind separating the duties of the guitar player. You know,
Okay. Yep.
Kevin he wasn't the lead guitar player, he was just the guitar player,
Yeah.
and he excelled at all of the aspects of playing guitar. And that was a real, like, a breakthrough for me, and it
Okay.
it made me want to be able to play more like that and improve my own approach to playing for the song. A lot of 1986, I was a pretty fresh guitar player. Um, and I was really all about pounding out the rhythm and screwing up the solo. Typically, I didn't really become a decent lead player until the early 90s. I had to put a lot of effort into it.
You
Um,
and me both.
yeah. So, yeah, it definitely changed my perspective on what a guitar player could do.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
All right.
And that you didn't necessarily need two guitar players in a band,
No, no, especially
which,
in those that ensemble, that pop rock ensemble, I think having two is just absolute overkill.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
Well,
so there you go. And not a super exciting episode, but hopefully a lot of people will go and listen to that album. I think that might be the first really surprising album I've thrown at you. I mean, some other ones have kind of come out of left field, but I think this one was a real surprise.
it was, but I get the bigger surprise was that I actually enjoyed
You
listening
liked
to
it.
it. Yeah, I did. And I was like, oh, cool. I actually get to say something positive, and I can understand why you like this album. But you continue to mystify me because just when I think I have your tastes and preferences nailed down, you throw something like broadcast by Cutting Crew at me.
Nice.
And yeah, so I'm looking forward to your next pick. But next time is my turn.
That's right. Next time is your turn.
All right. So One more time, I'll say differentstringspodcast.com. Please and thank you. Let us know what you think of Cutting Crew's broadcast in the comments. Please like and subscribe and do all the things and all that
What was
stuff.
that?
All the thing. Wait, let's see if Zoom is working today. On Zoom there. Got my back, Zoom.
Fantastic. Well, I hope everybody has a good time all the time. In the words of Viv from Spinal Tap. And how excited are you that they're making another Spinal Tap movie? I can
Uh,
hardly stand it.
I have mixed feelings because on one hand, you and I both know that there's a lot of there's a lot of years between 2024 and the original.
Yep. Yep.
These are not youngsters, and tastes and times have changed, and reboots and sequels always give me the chills.
Pause. Yeah.
But if they could do it right, is Rob Reiner involved?
Yeah. Yeah. He's coming back as Marty DeBurgi.
All right, so I don't know. I have a little bit of hope, but when's the last time Rob directed a movie? Like,
It's been a while.
yeah, like I don't know. So we'll see. Like I'm excited that it's happening for them. But I know this is probably off topic, but we watched Better Call Saul, and I'm sorry, but if you see Michael McKean as Chuck in Better Call Saul, you will never, ever, ever see him as anything else.
Oh,
He
really?
he dramatic role. He is absolutely one of the greatest dramatic actors on television, and that is saying something for the guy who was in Lenny and the Squigtones. That's all I'm
Yeah.
saying. Like,
Yeah.
I just can't believe and not just me, Chuck from Better Call Saul was one of the most hated characters on television when that show was running. That's
Nice.
how good Michael McKean was at playing that character. You hated
Nice.
him, and yet you felt bad for him and you were sad for him. And I don't want to give anything away if you haven't seen it. So
I haven't.
some of the greatest television ever done. Yeah, go watch it, man.
I will. To answer your question, the last new movie that Rob Reiner directed was called Shock and Awe in 2017. So it's been a while for him.
Wow, but I didn't realize it was even that recent.
Yeah.
All right, good for you, Rob. All right, I
All
guess we
right.
say,
We say goodbye and good luck.
all right, peace out.
Bye.
Uh,